Hello. Just getting started here. Sorry, I'm a couple seconds late here. Let me pull up some slides. All right. Hey, people. Alrighty. Let's share some slides. Share slides. Confirm your devices. There you go. Good job, Brent. I always do that. Remind people. I'm like, that whiteboard behind you has a lot of interesting looking math equations. I hope that's not important.
Yeah, we're supposed to wipe every whiteboard as soon as you finish the meeting. So I'm just helping out.
All right, let me get this open. GitHub. IETF working group. There we go. Repositories. All right. Well, sorry about all the confusion about the links. Apparently, when you make enter a meeting and then move it, it blows up the link. So we had to get the last second. We had to get a new meeting set up, and then they gave us a new link. So that all worked out. I don't know if Erica's going to make it, but we can go ahead. Let's get started. So this is a virtual meeting of the DULT working group. We kind of set these up to be monthly. This one's every 3 weeks because we wanted to make sure we avoided the 2-week blackout window before the meeting in Madrid. We're not going to meet. This working group is not going to meet in Madrid. We just figured that probably not many are going to be there, and it's a bad time zone. Yada yada yada. But I did also put in interims for August, September, October, and December. November we'll have to talk about as we get closer because the first week will again clash with this 2-week thing. So we'll see how much work we get done in October and whether we need a meeting or not. This is an official IETF meeting, so note well, if you're participating, please follow the policies and procedures. A lot of this stuff has to do with IPR and the like. So if you see something or know something, you got to disclose it. If you don't want to disclose, don't participate. There's a bunch of other links there for anti-harassment and code of conduct and other things, but I'll get to that in a second. This is the note really well. This is the part where we basically say, let's kind of keep it professional, treat everybody with respect. You don't have to love everybody's ideas, but you should really kind of love the person. And also, if you think that there's anything, if you've been harassed, by anyone, you can contact me, Deb, who's our area director. There's Buds people. There's a bunch of other resources. But yeah, just make sure that everybody, does a good job. Virtual meeting tips. If you're here, you probably know this. We are recording the session. There's no need to sign in for a blue sheet or anything because it does it automatically. But just make sure you're kind of muting your microphone if you're not talking. I like dogs, but I don't know that I want to hear them barking all the time. Okay, let's do next. So this agenda is just like last time. We're basically just going to kind of, crowdsource where we want to go and then try to move through each one of the documents and what we can get out of it. I think Christina's not going to make it, so I don't know that we'll be talking much about her document. So I guess what I'll do then is get to the important part. Ask for a scribe. Does anybody want to take notes? We don't need the play-by-play as some people do. All we really need is like decisions that were made. Anybody willing to volunteer?
I will take some notes. Let me grab the agenda from somewhere. I will need to go immediately at the top of the hour, though.
Okay. All right. We're only scheduled for an hour, so that's good because I gotta go. I gotta run too. All right. So I guess I see Maggie and Brent here. Do you guys want to rock, paper, scissors for who goes first?
We can, but I don't have anything prepared.
Okay, fair enough. I know that's perfectly fine, right? So let me stop sharing the slides and then I'll share my screen.
And Sitica's on vacation, and
okay.
I don't think anyone from Google was stepping in to represent.
Okay.
So.
Well, if we can get done a little bit, I'll be happy. So we're going to share this screen. All right. So I'm in the repository. So Maggie, are you in a spot where you think that we could jump in?
Yeah, so in terms of topics, Brent actually left a bunch of issues for us to work on.
Ooh, excellent.
I think they're pretty short, so I don't, and like friendly suggestions, so I think we can handle them offline.
Okay.
I think the part that probably makes most sense to talk about is to revisit the remote disablement discussion from last time. We're kind of still working on it, but I think we have at least some ideas that we can talk about. So give me 1 second. I can get the link to that and I can share it with you so you can
Okay.
show it.
Awesome. Yeah, just go ahead and drop that in the chat.
It's not my document, so I can't make it world readable, but I did share it with Sean on your whatever email you use for IETF. Okay. Um, so basically, for people who weren't here last time, we've been trying to come up with a way to address what we're kind of calling the canonical stalking scenario. Um, can you scroll down a tiny bit? Yeah, so basically, there could be a scenario where a person has done everything that we currently support them to be able to do. For example, to find a tag. So, for example, playing a sound or using precision finding, if that's supported by their platform and by the accessory, but the victim still cannot locate the device. For example, this could be a device that's like planted deeply within a car. And from what I understand, this is not a very common scenario, but it definitely happens. And then that scenario, there's not really good recourse. Basically, someone has to just sell their car. And obviously that is not a good outcome. And so we're trying to figure out how can we help this scenario in a way that doesn't necessarily create more vulnerabilities in the network or create like really unexpected or undesired behavior for what we might consider more benign use cases. And so what Sadika and I did was we came up with a proposal, and we also got a bunch of feedback from a couple of people, but we can get more feedback here. This is not formally in any of the documents, but I imagine the some of the design considerations would eventually go in the threat model document, and then any implementation details would go in the appropriate, technical document. So if you scroll down a little bit, I can give you an idea of some of the different kinds of scenarios considering. So in terms of benign scenarios, we're considering someone, maybe they forgot their bag in a Uber or a taxi. Maybe they forgot their bag on the bus, which is a similar case. But the difference would be that instead of just being one user who's nearby your tag, there's a bunch of users that are nearby your tag. There's also other case where maybe you put a tag in your luggage, and a luggage handler might receive an alert, and then think that, oh, someone's tracking me, and then disable the tag when really it was just you were disconnected from your tag temporarily. Can you scroll down? And then there's a lot of other benign cases. So one of the ones is the way that we tell that someone's close to their owner is that it has a Bluetooth connection to the owner device. But if someone disables their Bluetooth temporarily, it will appear that they're away from the owner, even when they aren't actually away from the owner. Another one is a shared keys scenario. So basically, like, let's say you borrow your partner's keys and you're not both associated with that tag. It might seem like you're being tracked, and everyone around you might also seem like they're being tracked, but it's actually just keys that you borrowed. And then there's case 7 is the intentional remote disablement, but for the use of theft. And so in this case, we don't necessarily want to care about this scenario, but we're kind of listing it for completeness. But basically, a user, if we enabled remote disablement, a thief might be able to disable that person's tag and prevent them from finding it. And then there's also like another example of intentional remote disablement where two users who basically have access to the same thing, so like a child or pet or property, but they don't have some sort of family sharing, one person could intentionally disable the tag as a form of harassment or in order to steal the property or child or whatever. So those are kind of like the range of scenarios that we want to consider. And we had a couple guidelines when we were thinking about our proposal. So one was to make sure to prioritize people over property. So we're kind of listing the a lot of different scenarios, and but at the end we want to really try to focus on the like the unwanted tracking cases and prioritize those. Um, Other things that we want to do is we want to make sure that we address expected and or unexpected location tracking. So this is one of the reasons why we want to support both active scanning for devices if you expect that you might be being tracked, and also like passive notification in case you're not suspecting tracking. The other thing is balancing the privacy of tag owners with the need to protect users from unwanted location tracking. So this is things like thinking about how frequently you rotate IDs. And then also considering whether good alternatives are available. So for example, last time we talked about the forgetting your bag in a taxi or an Uber. There's an alternative there where like if it did get remotely disabled, you could call the you could contact Uber customer support, you could file a claim with a taxi service. So there are alternatives available, but there aren't really good alternatives available in the case that we're ultimately trying to address, like selling a car is not really a good alternative. So weighing those different alternatives when we consider the impacts of remote disablement on that use case. So we're still kind of refining some of the language here, but we have two different proposals. So the first proposal is that a tag can be disabled. And what this means is that its location will no longer be crowdsourced, but it can still be scanned for. And there are certain conditions that have to be met for that to be true. And these are sorted differently depending on whether or not you're using passive scanning or active scanning. So for passive scanning, that requires that a user has received some sort of alert. So if they haven't received an alert, then none of this would trigger. And then what we want to do is we want to make it so that a person has to search for the device at least a couple times to kind of prevent the benign scenarios from triggering as much as possible. So for platform accessory combinations that support finding technologies like ultra wideband, we want a user to attempt to locate the tag using these technologies at least 3 times. And then after that time, they can indicate they still cannot find the tag. And then if the platform or accessory combination does not support something like ultra wideband, then they should play a sound or play haptics or whatever other finding technologies are supported at least 3 times. And then after that time, they can indicate this, they can still find the tag. Originally, I had a requirement about like a duration of time, but we have struck that for now. In terms of active scanning, it's similar. So in this case, the user has to scan and find that a tag near them is separated from its owner. So in the passive case, they will not receive a notification if it's not separated from its owner. So it's sort of a similar requirement. So you have to scan and find a tag that's separated from the owner. And then they have to, use a play sound or other applicable alerts. And I should probably update this just to be like more consistent with the passive case. But so imagine they're kind of the similar requirements. And then there's also for the active case, we also wanted to add some additional requirements because those will probably be captured by the passive notification case. So if you actively scan for a tag, we want there to be a period of time and a period of distance within which we can avoid the benign cases, but make sure to actually catch it if it is like the car case. So for example, I chose like 10 minutes. The tag has to be in the same location as you for 10 minutes. And you have to travel a certain distance. So we picked 500 meters, but again, these numbers can change. And then scan again. And then assuming that tag is still with you after 10 minutes and after 500 meters, then we're going to be pretty confident that that tag is following that person. And then they'll be able to disable it from there. Okay, so there's just one more proposal and then some supporting material, and then I can go to questions.
Just want to check,
Yeah.
Ecker, do you have a question, a clarifying question, or can you wait, or do you want to address it now.
Where do you think these properties are enforced?
Yeah, I was assuming we haven't really gotten to the implementation details yet. We're kind of figuring out what we would ideally want. But I was thinking probably by the platform. I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in on that.
I don't see how that works. Like the entire premise of this is I can build a device like that is not tied to any platform and disables tags that are following me. So, and that device is like arbitrary and malicious. And so like anything which cannot be enforced, like at the tag, I just don't see how it works. I'm just going to lie about my position, and I'm going to lie about trying to find the thing. So I'm going to, here's the attack scenario is this. I'm going to build a device. What that device does is it pretends it did all these things, and every time it sees a tag, it disables it. And so I just like ride around on Caltrain disabling everybody's tags. And so like that's the threat scenario I'm concerned with. And so like most of these things seem to be enforced on the phone, but that doesn't work.
Yeah, so there are a couple things that we have tried to think about to avoid this. So if you scroll down a little bit, I think they're in the document. Okay, yeah, here. Also, can you mute? I think you have some echo, like I'm hearing myself. And there you go. Okay. Yeah, so when the tag is disabled, it can be re-enabled under certain conditions. So one of the obvious ones that I thought of was that if the tag owner returns into range, then the tag gets re-enabled. So for example, like with the keys case, as soon as someone goes home and their partner's nearby, then the tag will automatically re-enable. And the other thing that we had was like notifications. So if someone's disabling your tag, or a tag is being re-enabled, then there'll be different ways to notify people about what has happened. The other thing I was thinking about specifically for the case that you're talking about with like a mass like disablement of everyone's tags. That's why I want to make it harder to disable a tag remotely. So there's all these different steps that a person has to go through to do them. So it's and then the other thing is I forgot my train of thought there. Yeah, okay, I'll stop there for a second.
Right, but the point I'm making is that you can't check the person went through those steps because those steps are not detectable. Like you say, I gotta do the finding, but how do you know?
You're saying that someone, if they like jailbroke a device, they could just send an opcode to the tag.
What do you mean jailbroke? Who says this has to be a real device at all? Like, isn't the entire premise of this operation that I don't have to be tied to an Apple device in order to disable an Apple tag?
Well, you would have to be able to run some sort of you'd have to be able to run something to send the command to the device, right?
I'm just emitting Bluetooth BLE codes. I mean, like that's not a secure operation.
I think these are good questions, Eckert. I think that we need to wrap around the goals first, and but I think there are some things we could do. But I also share your concern that I shouldn't have to be a subscriber to Platform X to be able to disable a tag from Platform X, right?
Right. I'm just trying to give the threat model. That's what I was trying to say last time. I mean, it didn't like really work properly, but like I don't understand how any of this can work. Like you have to assume it's like an arbitrary radio emitter. And so anything that involves the phone behaving correctly, like just is gonna like immediately have the problem I'm raising here. So you got to assume that like any command, like any plausible like thing that would cause a device to be to disable itself can be like maliciously emitted, I think, unless you're going to tell me how we're going to authenticate that behavior.
Yeah, I think Brent said in the chat that some of these properties could be enforced by the tag. So I think we need to figure out if they can be.
I agree. Some of these can be enforced by tag, but even then, like, so I make it beep. So it beeps 3 times, and then like the thing disables. That doesn't bother me, right? I'm just care. I mean, it's annoying to me, but like fundamentally, like again, I'm really trying to get at like we got to think about like the attacker wants to make the system break. And so we got to, and it's like, if we build I hear you sort of say like people for property, but like if we build a system that like basically is trivially disableable by someone like has like any Android phone, that's really not going to work.
Yeah. So basically, I think the other point I was going to make was some sort of rate limiting. But I think the point is that if the rate limiting is coming from the platform side, then the tag doesn't necessarily like it can't. That would have to be something that's handled by the crowdsourcing or by the platform, but it wouldn't be enforceable on the tag. So, yeah, I think I agree with Michael that I think this is ideally what we would want, and if we have to change it, we can change it. But I think we should think through the high level stuff, and then we can figure out how to actually deal with the implementation.
Brent?
I'll actually get off the queue for a second, let Maggie finish, and then provide some comments. I don't want to derail her too much.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, can you go back up a little bit? So, yeah. So one of the other things we were thinking about is if you had this kind of system where tags are being disabled and re-enabled, that there needs to be some sort of way for people to know that this is happening to them. And so we're kind of considering notifications in two different scenarios. So one is when a tag has been disabled, notifying the tag owner. This one is a bit risky because if someone is tracking someone else without their consent and then the tag is disabled, this is basically telling like that person who was tracking that person that they are disabling the tag, which could be dangerous. So we're considering striking that one. But the one that I think is important to keep is when a tag has been re-enabled, the user who disabled the tag is notified. So that way, if you expected something to be off and then it's suddenly on again, you know. And okay, so then the other one is one that I think is not as impactful as the first one, but it's basically just allowing a victim to opt out of the crowdsourced network temporarily. Nothing changes about the tag, but it's basically just like on the platform side. And there's two different ways you could do this. So at least two different ways you could do this. So one is just stop crowdsourcing altogether for 24 hours, which would be the safest thing to do, or just stop tracking that particular, stop allowing that particular tag to sync with you. But the downside is that the tags can still be reported by all the other phones in the vicinity. So this is only really helpful in like a rural area, or maybe if you're driving somewhere and there's not a lot of other phones that can ping the tracker. But at the same time, it's sort of something we can do for free if we wanted to. It doesn't really have a lot of downsides. Okay, can you scroll down? Okay, so we wanted to run through like these different scenarios and talk about like what the alternatives are for them and what we think the quality of the alternative is. So with the tag is well hidden in a car, if you cannot find it, your alternative is to sell the car. So you have a very poor alternative. For a lot of the other cases, you have kind of like a moderate to good alternative. So you can always call the Uber driver or contact a taxi company. If you forget something on the bus, you can contact the transportation lost and found. These are not like great solutions, but they exist. And then in other cases, like for example, if you had shared keys and they got disabled, you just go home and then they get reconnected and everything's fine, as long as you don't lose them en route, I guess. Okay, scroll down, please. And then we were kind of looking at what the impact would be on these different scenarios. And again, it isn't considering the stuff Ecker was talking about, just considering these scenarios in kind of an ideal world, I guess. And so in this case, it would have a high positive impact on our desired scenario, but it would have like some negative impacts on these kind of other benign scenarios. So particularly like, you know, forgetting your bag in a bus or something like a lost item type scenario. It has like a medium negative connotation, I would say. And then But for like some of these other scenarios where you're not near your device, but you haven't lost it, the negative impact is relatively low. Okay, scroll down, please. And it's just the same thing for the other scenario, which isn't really that interesting. I think that might be the end of the document. Is that right? Okay. I haven't been able to read the chat yet, but I will pause now and read what people were saying.
All right, Brent, I think you can come off now if you want. Somehow I managed to lose my window.
Yeah,
Where'd it
thank
go?
you. So I back to Ecker's earlier comment, I agree with that. The problem that I see, maybe to try to be more succinct about it, is you really, to have some additional protection, you really want to make sure the tag would know that an alert had been shown for it. And then on top of that, I mean, per your policy, and then on top of that, that the user from that alert had tried to play sound or precision finding a number of times or for a duration. The latter is enforceable by the tag, but the former is not with the current architecture. The tag doesn't know that a particular alert showed up on a particular phone. So that's a pretty big concern from a mischievous person that just uses an Android app or an iOS app to trigger the same type of disablement in an unexpected way. Second quick comment, the stopping crowdsourcing for my, and if let's say I get an alert, I want to stop crowdsourcing, it's your option 2 for just the device that got that alert. It's a little bit more complex than that, even at the individual level. So I share your concern that it maybe doesn't, it provides, I think, a false sense of security personally, and at least that's my personal view, because there could be other people nearby who are crowdsourcing. In addition, even from the individual user's point of view, it's not just your phone, that could do the crowdsourcing. It could be your laptop, your pad, a variety of other devices you have, and some of those don't even support unwanted tracking alerts. So I think to do this, if we wanted to do this for the individual, it's at the account level for the individual, which definitely makes it a little bit harder of an implementation, but presumably solvable.
Maybe I didn't understand the stopping crowdsourcing. I thought you meant disable the tag, but you mean my phone doesn't broadcast its location?
Yes. Sorry, you're very quiet. I couldn't hear you very well.
So when you say stopping crowdsourcing, you mean that my phone no longer reports the location of the tag, as opposed to the tag no longer broadcasts the location?
Yes, it just means that your phone opts out.
That seems like it has extremely low privacy impact because
Yes,
other phones in the area
that's
are all
what I said.
broadcasting.
Yep,
Okay.
it
I mean,
does.
if this, I mean, it seems like the only thing, forgetting about the activation mechanism, the only thing that plausibly works here is the tag stops broadcasting its thing, right? That's the only thing. I mean, otherwise, so the question at hand is how to do that in a way that doesn't allow anybody to disable it.
Yes, exactly. Either right. It's either people are not allowed to disable it, like we are very stringent about the circumstances in which people are able to disable it, and or there are ways to re-enable it once it's been disabled, right? I think that's the part that we need to figure out how to do.
Brent, Corn, come on, please.
Yeah, quick question. What about, and maybe this is into the definitions of accessory and such, what about use cases where longer term the tracking is actually put in to find a stolen device? So I'm thinking specifically of car use cases where they put 7, 8, 9 tags actually in the car whenever it's sold, and a future use case where this system is actually providing is one of many other tags that are on the car that basically you're killing the use case in that scenario, right? If somebody can disable it and they steal a car, I have seen use cases for that. So I'm curious as to how, if it's intentionally put in from the beginning as this is a preventative measure, would it not qualify as an accessory in this situation?
Maggie, I think you just jump back in.
Okay, yeah. So this is a good question. So there's a couple different components to this. So one component is what type of accessory it is. So basically, it would be considered a location tracking accessory, and we have this additional qualification right now that if it's easily discoverable, it does not have to implement the protocol, like if it's easy to find. So we would want to know, is this easily discoverable? But even if it's easily discoverable, it could choose to adopt the protocol. Um, and then, yeah, so that's like the main requirement. There was another one too, but I'm forgetting it.
It would not be easily discoverable. So again, the idea, so traditionally in this type of scenario, when they sell a car, they'll actually put 6, 7, 8 tags in different parts of the car, actually in the car. And today it's actually proprietary system. And as you can imagine, if you're putting multiple tags that some are cellular, some might work on Find My, some might work on different types of networks, and they'll put in multiple so that it can't be jammed. It has multiple types of connectivity. And so they'll put multiple tags in the car. You can't discover them. So there are two kind of conflicts here. One is if you shut it off, if you steal it, then obviously that makes it a little difficult to recover the car. Now, there are other ways to recover it, and usually there are duplicate backups. So I could argue that. But the second thing would be when they steal a car, the first thing they do is go in and try to find those tags by making it the ability to make noise. Okay, I hear it's over here in this section, cut out this one little part and take it out. So I'm trying to think of future scenarios. We actually have customers right now that are considering this for car tags, and they're thinking, can I utilize a Find My as a backup connectivity method? And this obviously defeats that. So I'm thinking of a different classification for something that is intentionally put in there ahead of time and is only controlled by a certain company, and you can only pull the information whenever the car is actually stolen and reported to the police and things like that.
Yeah, so I remember from like our early discussions, basically we said that we were not trying to design this protocol for anti-theft use case. So I would say that something like this might not choose to adopt the protocol and would be considered a different use case. So this is part of the reason is why we have like all these different scenarios, because we kind of decided at the beginning that we wouldn't consider anti-theft as a use case, but we're getting into this area where like Ecker's bringing up and like the like these benign cases that are like lost item cases, or just like you're not literally right next to your item use cases that could create really undesirable behaviors. But I think this particular one I think would consider out of scope. And also oh, sorry, go ahead.
So the answer then would be it doesn't really have to do DULT because it's out of scope with what
Yeah.
the normal. Yeah, okay, understood.
And also to Ecker's earlier point about like just people just running around and disabling tags, I think part of the reason, one of the other things that can try to prevent this is the fact that like the near owner bit has to be off, right? Like if I'm on the bus with my device, as long as my Bluetooth is on, no one can disable my tag. But that's why the luggage case at the airport is a good example, because most people are going to be away from their luggage, and then the tag will automatically be re-enabled when they go near their luggage again. So basically, we have to consider a scenario where people are away from their tags and they cannot easily get to their tag again for the system to automatically re-enable their tags.
So I'm sorry, one final question. So is the assumption that things that are out of scope would not be approved by an Apple or Google or a network? Is that the assumption?
I cannot
Or would
answer
we
that
would
question.
we bifurcate it? Would we have two separate things where if it's intentionally put in for one reason, then that's not really a tracking scenario? Will the networks actually bifurcate that scenario and say, for a mobile tag, then that can be moved around and put in somebody's purse or whatever, that would require DULT. But if it's purpose built and put in for a reason and utilizes the same network, then it doesn't have to follow these.
Yeah, so kind of based on what you're saying, it sounds like maybe we should consider whether or not we want to have some sort of express carve out written into the standard, like defining the way in which it's out of scope. I'd also be interested in hearing from other people who, you know, Apple, we don't have any Google representatives here, so maybe an Apple representative, if they want to comment on that as well.
May I make a suggestion? If you want to use the incredibly powerful tracking network, you need to be implementing DULT. You cannot use the powerful tracking network for your anti-theft device because we decided that anti-theft was out of scope because people are more important than things, and you absolutely cannot build a tracking device that that addresses the anti-theft scenario without also creating a perfect stalking device. This is very upsetting to people who want to build anti-theft tools, and too bad.
I don't disagree. I guess this is my question. So there are only 2 networks currently, but there could be more coming in the future. So again, I'm trying to understand, are the networks in agreement with this, that all devices, whether it runs on Apple and Google, would require DULT and there is no security capability?
I mean, I can do a brief comment on that. We have if you want to build an accessory that works on Apple's Find My network, we have an MFI program that people need to go through for certification that has all the details about what's allowed and not allowed. And we do not allow anti-theft type accessories right now.
Understood.
And if you're not a developer network, it's easy to become a developer and get access to that document. That should help elucidate maybe some of your questions, Brent.
Oh, I've read it. I'm just trying, and Google's as well. I'm just trying to think of, 1, additional networks that try to implement DULT, and 2, expansion of the program inevitably. That's what I'm trying to think through. As the market expands, will there be separate use cases? But it sounds like there won't be. So understood.
Yeah, Eva's got a great point. It's such a powerful thing to have a wide scale network that has billions of devices in it, and there's no obvious way to make it work for anti-theft.
All right, Mike. It seems like that's something we need to make sure we get in the notes. Okay, where do we want to go from here? Brent?
If we wanted to use the rest of the time, Maggie, I'm happy to talk about any of those issues I filed last night briefly, if you wanted like clarifying comments on them. Just wanted to offer that. And I apologize, I filed 4 or 5 last night because this meeting was kind of a forcing function for me to reread the threat model.
I feel like I understood what the concerns were, as long as you can read my responses. I mean, I think it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, well, we don't necessarily have to fill all the time. So if we're at a point where we think we're at a good break, we can go ahead and end, or we can keep going. Maggie?
I was thinking the other thing that we could potentially look at, if people had had time to look at it, were the shared definitions that I came up with, or whether or not that would be something to do offline. Because I made a pull request on the accessory protocol document and also on this one with some updated definitions. If you go to the bottom, 102, that is basically trying to come up with definitions that all the documents can share.
Did people have a chance to review these?
I did not, unfortunately. It's my opinion. I probably would do a better job reviewing it offline.
Would we be down for making this the first agenda item on the next meeting so that everybody has a chance to review them?
Yep, we can do that.
Okay, that sounds good.
So this one and the accessory protocol. how
They're the
many
same
buttons?
text. I just
Oh, okay, all right.
I was asked to make a pull request on the accessory protocol.
So it's the same.
So
same. All right, cool.
it's
So you only
just
have
the
to
same text.
Yeah, all right.
It's number 24.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
Yep. All right, great. So then you only actually got to review one, and then it can be percolated over to the other one. Awesome. Okay. All right. Please make sure, Eva, could you do me a favor and make sure to go read the notes to make sure that Michael captured what you said?
Sure. Where
Yeah.
are the notes? I asked
There,
foolishly.
if you go across the top and click on
Note-taking tool.
note-taking tool, you should be
No?
able to jump in there. Mike dropped
okay.
a link in the thing too.
Perfect.
I mean, I think basically the gist is don't use this network for something it's not designed to be used for. Right.
Legit.
So, yep.
Is there a distinction between
there it is. If you want to use the powerful tracking network, then you must use DULT. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you said that very clearly. I thought that was great. But is there a distinction between anti-thefting networks where what I want is my bag not to go leave the cruise ship so because it'll get stolen, but it's okay that I track it on the cruise ship? That I was surprised at that statement because I'm like, think so many people want them for anti-theft and they don't understand what they're getting or not getting.
Yeah, I think if you read the terms of use, I think it's pretty clear about it not being for theft, but that's what people do use it for.
It's also not for tracking your pets, and yet that seems to be I'm seeing ads for alternate tags just for your pet now.
Yeah, the demand for this kind of functionality is strong, and that is one of the reasons why it's really important to keep our eye on the ball when it comes to the design of these systems, because people will always be pushing for a design that that gives them pet tracking and anti-theft, and this opens the door to all kinds of stalking that we have decided that we're going to fight.
Okay. And I guess we've reached a natural conclusion today. So everybody get ahead and read the definitions. You'll have to pick one. Let's try to edit just one so we don't have to have comments in multiple places. Let's go ahead and try to focus on the PR that's in the threat model.
You can use the accessory protocol one because the threat model is a draft.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Do
Can
the
I just make
accessory
one
protocol.
other comment?
Sure. Absolutely.
So in terms of the remote disablement, it sounds like the next step is we need to figure out which of these things can be enforced by the tag and consider like different attacks against or abuses of the remote disablement, right? So I think that's another thing for us to talk about next time. Maybe I don't remember when Siddiq is back from vacation, but we can try to think, Brent and I and other people can try to think through, and maybe we'll loop Becker in to try to think through what the actual implementation would look like. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, well, thanks everyone for participating, and we'll see you in August or on the list.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Michael, for taking notes.
Go click the button to suck them into Data Tracker before they die. Oh, it's gone.